لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستنصره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وأشهد أن نبينا وعظيمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد يقول جل جلاله في محكم كتابه في سورة يوسف وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض يتبوأ منها حيث يشاء نصيب برحمتنا من نشاء ولا نضيع أجر المحسنين ولأجر الآخرة خير للذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون. Today is the final installment of the reflections upon Surat Yusuf, and I started this series a number of months ago, almost a year. And I gave the majority of them in the 1:30 khutbah slot. So if you haven't heard them, then this may lack a little bit of context for you. But I started on a series of explaining Surah Al-Mi'in, from Yunus to Al-Ra'd specifically. Each one of these surahs takes an Islamic category, one of the 4 Islamic basic categories, and points out a fundamental topic that if lost, Islam will not function, and you will not be able to fulfill your role as a Muslim without it. And Surat Yunus took the topic or the category of creed and the fundamental topic of Iman bil Qada wal Qadr. And I did 7 or 8 khutbahs about that specifically. And Surat Hud took the category of the message of Islam itself and the topic of reform. And without reform, Islam does not serve its purpose. And Surat Yusuf took the category of ethics, values, and behaviors. And the fundamental topic of consistency. And the whole thing that I've done over the last maybe 6 weeks, I've just tried to show you the diagram of Yusuf alayhi salam's life and how he went through all of these difficulties that sometimes because of the story is so beautiful we don't appreciate really what Yusuf went through. And to make it even more difficult to appreciate it, Yusuf alayhi salam never failed to meet the ethical standard that his father taught him to carry throughout his life. Meaning Yusuf alayhi salam never changed. His ethics were not for sale, they were not variable, they were not subject to the changes of the world around him. And that is the only value for ethics. Meaning ethics are worthless if that's not what they are. If they are not consistent and constant in your life, then they don't mean anything. If you're only generous because right now things are working really well for you and you have a lot of money, then you're not really generous. If all it takes is a few changes for you to stop being generous, then generosity is not a value and it's not an ethic in your life. And this is what Surat Yusuf is explaining to us. That these are not variables, they're constants. If you are kind, if you are loving, if you are tender, if you are someone who stands by al-haq, whatever it is that you are, whatever values you have chosen in your life, they have to be consistent. Nothing can change them. The waves of life cannot come and actually take one of them away from you. And that's what Yusuf teaches us. And if you haven't heard these khutbahs, go back and listen to the khutbahs that I talked about. No matter where he was in his life, no matter what time in his life, no matter what circumstances he was going through, he maintained the exact same standard, almost in a confusing manner. Wallahi, it's almost confusing for me. I can't get it. How is it that you're able to continue to be like that? And today is the final installment of this series for Yusuf specifically. And we'll move on to the fourth surah, inshallah, next week. How he dealt with victory, with success. This 5-year-old boy was thrown into a well by his own blood, by his brothers. They conspired against him. He threw him into a well. He stayed there for quite a bit of time. He was taken out, not to be returned to his parents, but to be sold as a slave somewhere else. Because of this act, this horrendous act of betrayal that he went through, he would grow up without his father and without his mother. And he would grow up for the majority of his youth as a slave. And then he would be put to the test of fahisha. He would be asked to perform a fahisha that is so easy for men to fall into. It's something that's very easy for a man to actually fall into. He was a slave, he was young, he was asked for fahisha, and he said no unequivocally. And because he said no, he was unjustly accused of the thing that he refused to do. And then he was jailed for it for at least 7 years of his life. And through all of that, Yusuf maintained the exact same posture, the same composure, the same composure and the exact same character. And he continued to treat when his brothers came to him. He knew them, but he refused to punish them. He refused to destroy his family. He gave it time, he planned it out, and he found a way to bring his family together, as I explained last week. He actually planned it so that his brothers would be in a position of weakness so they would actually admit it. Because if they just admit it that they made that mistake, he will forgive them. But if they don't admit it and they defend themselves, then it's going to turn into a personal issue and he's going to punish them and it gets messy. So he was patient. And they would say, "In yasriq faqad saraqa akhun lahu min qabl." And they speak about him even though they threw him into a well as a child. They say, "Oh, we have a brother who stole one day." Speaking about him, he never stole in his life, but فَأَسَرَّهَا Yusuf. He held on to it. He didn't let it make him angry and say something. He held his composure. Then he brought them back and he put them through tribulation so that they would come weak. So that when he told them, مَا فَعَلْتُمْ بِيُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ إِذْ أَنْتُمْ جَاهِلُونَ. What did you do to Yusuf and his brother? Your days of ignorance. It clicked for them. أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ يُوسُف قَالَ أَنَا يُوسُف قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. They admitted it. They admitted it and he forgave them. Alayhi salam. We're going to take one more kind of snapshot of Yusuf when he's on top. When everything is working out for him. A lot of us don't know how to practice the art of victory. The art of success. It's an art. When you're finally successful, when you grind, when you put in the time and the hours and the effort and you spend your life trying to achieve things in an obstacle after obstacle with challenge after challenge and you're knocked down on your face time after time and you finally make it. What do you do then? That is a moment where your true colors also become clear. That's where you show who you actually are. When you're on top. See, Yusuf, we saw him when he was in the well as a slave in jail. He continued to perform da'wah. In jail, he's performing da'wah. He's answering questions to fix the country with no conditions. He's not asking for his freedom because that's who he is. That's how he functions. He doesn't care. He's not going to bargain with ilm. He's not going to bargain with the ilm of Allah. He doesn't do that. But that was when he was weak. Sometimes people continue to be very humble and kind and gentle and tender when they're weak, but when they have power, they change. What did Yusuf do when he had power? The ayah says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُف. We gave Yusuf tamkeen. We granted him strength and power and status. يَتَبَوَّأُ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ. He walks wherever he wants and wherever he pleases in this kingdom. He is now equivalent to a king. نُصِيبُ بِرَحْمَتِنَا مَن نَشَاءُ وَلَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And as Allah always does, He gives His mercy and compassion to whomever He wants. And He will not forget the excellence of the reward of excellence of those who put it forward. And at the end, أَجْرُ الْآخِرَ خَيْرٌ. The ajr in the Day of Judgment is way better. Let's take a look. After his brothers took back his shirt, threw it at the face of his father, and his father was able to see again. And he made istighfar for his sons. They would go back to Egypt, to Yusuf. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ. And the moment of being reunited with his parents occurred many, many, many moons later. Yusuf alayhi salam was reunited with his father and his mother. And he took them and he embraced them. It was a moment of true emotion and true love that existed, that Yusuf alayhi salam waited for a very long time. He was never sure if he was ever going to see them again, but he was granted that moment, and he took and he embraced his parents. وَقَالَ ادْخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. Enter Egypt and you are safe here with me. You never have to be scared again. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. And he put his parents right beside him on the throne he was sitting on. وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And then his brothers and his parents would go ahead and they would bow to him, prostrating in a way that was acceptable back then. In our deen, it's not anymore in our sharia. But it was acceptable. It was a show of respect and of loyalty and of acknowledgement of greatness. And they did it for him. And at that moment, it all came together. The circle was 360. Full circle to exactly the first verse in that same surah. That early moment when he woke up at night as a child and he told his father, what did he tell his father? رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. Oh, my father, in my dream, I saw the sun and the moon and all of the planets come and they prostrated to me. What does this mean? And he told them, don't tell your brothers. Don't tell your brothers about this story, because Yaqub, the moment he heard the story, the moment he heard the ru'ya, he's like, oh, this is going to be difficult. He doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, but he knew deep inside Yusuf is going to have a hard story. It's going to come 360. It's going to come to full circle at some point, but until it does, it's going to be hard for everyone. And boy, was it hard. Yaqub lost his eyesight in pain. Do you understand how rare that is, medically speaking, for someone to cry to the point where he drives himself blind? His eyes are working, but emotionally he can't see anymore. He's in so much pain for losing his two sons. That's the pain that Yaqub had to go through. Yusuf, the tribulations that he went through, one day things are working, the other day are not, just went on for decades upon decades. But full circle, subhanallah, wa jalla jalalullah, full circle. He sits there and his parents are beside him and they all prostrate for him. وَقَالَ يَا أَبَتِي هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ مِنْ قَبْلِ. This is the prophecy of my vision back when I was 5. قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا. My Lord has brought it to fruition. You remember my father when I told you, when I saw the moon and the sun and the planets all prostrating, I didn't understand what it meant, and you told me, لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا. But I did anyways. In some narrations that he was a kid and he went and said and talked about it. We don't know for sure, obviously. But my father, it's happening right now. This is the interpretation of my dream, that my family would be. I want to take a sidetrack just for a moment. It's not the point of this khutbah, but I wanted you to think about something. You see the symbolism in this? Who prostrated for him on that moment? It was his father, his mother, and his siblings. What were they in his dream? The sun, the moon, the planets. That's your family, your solar system. Your family is your solar system that allows you to exist. That's who your father and mother are to you. That's who your siblings are to you. They're the planets in your solar system. They keep you around. They make sure that life works. They're the shams and the qamar and the kawakib for you. And if you want to take one story, if you didn't listen to the context of the khutbahs, you want to take one lesson, that's the lesson of Yusuf alayhi salam. He was betrayed by them, but they are still his planets. He was betrayed by them in a form that was just horrific, because they could have come clean at some point. 40 years, they could have come clean any day. They could have come and said, oh, my father, we threw him into a well, we didn't kill him. And they would have gone and looked for him and found him. But they didn't. They never admitted it until he forced them to. And still, with that degree of betrayal, they are his planets, alayhi salam. That is what he saw in that early vision. That what came true for him that day. And I think it's something worthy of contemplation. Listen to Yusuf speak about the position that he's in. He's going to make 7 points, all right? I want you to listen to these 7 points. You want to learn how to be victorious and successful and on top? Learn from Yusuf. Yusuf meant every single word he said in these verses. He meant every word. We say sometimes things that are similar, but we don't mean them. Listen to what he said. قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا. My Lord is the one who brought this prophecy to fruition and completion. He praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the prophecy, for the vision. وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ. And Allah has been very kind to me. He allows me to leave jail. وَجَاءَ بِكُم مِّنَ الْبَدُوِ. And Allah is praised. He brought you from the Badiya, brought you from the desert. مِن بَعْدِ أَن نَزَغَ الشَّيْطَانُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَ إِخْوَتِي. After Shaitan ruined the relationship between me and my siblings. He didn't say after my siblings threw me into a well consciously. No. He said Shaitan caused a rift. Shaitan caused a rift between me and my brothers. This is when Yusuf is on top. He doesn't poke. He doesn't go after them and say you were wrong and you did this. No. It's Shaitan. من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي إن ربي لطيف لما يشاء إنه هو العليم الحكيم. And then he praises Allah generally. Allah is the one who has the intricate knowledge, and He is tender with His servants, and He is omniscient and He is all wise. رب قد آتيتني من الملك. And he tells you, oh Allah, you're the one who gave me the sovereignty that I have today. وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث. And all the knowledge I have comes from you. فاطر السماوات والأرض أنت وليي في الدنيا والآخرة توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين. I ask you to make me your ally, and then just allow me. All I ask of you, O Allah, at this moment is allow me to die as Muslim, and then add me to the pious. Just add me to the end of the line of the pious. This is Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf, the son of Yaqub alayhi salam, the son of Ishaq alayhi salam, the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is what he is saying. And this is the art of being on top. When you recognize that the moment of your victory is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every aspect of it came from Allah. Every single step was a facilitation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything bad, either take blame for it or blame shit. Don't even blame people for it. Don't even ruin your relationship with others. And then thank Him. And then ask Him politely, humbly, in a humiliated fashion, to add you to those who are going to be accepted by Him subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. إخواني وأخواتي حديثي اليوم معكم عن قصة يوسف وهذه آخر خطبة في هذه المسألة. يوسف عليه السلام مع التمكين. كثير منا يجيد التواضع والأدب وحسن الخلق والتعامل مع الآخرين إذا ما كان ضعيفا، لكن إذا تمكن وإذا كتب الله له قوة أو سلطة أو جاها تحول إلى وحش شرس يأكل كل من حوله ويعاقب كل الذين وقفوا أمامه أو الذين كانوا عقبات في طريقه. أما النفوس الراقية، أما النفوس العظيمة التي تزكت وارتقت في أعين الله سبحانه وتعالى على كتابه وسنة نبيه وأخذت من لدنه سبحانه وتعالى علما صحيحا، هؤلاء إذا ما كتب لهم النصر تواضعوا لربهم وأكثروا من حمد الله وتمجيد الله وتسبيحه سبحانه وتعالى، لا يبتغون تعاليا على عدو ولا شماتة في منافس، ولا ينسبون الفضل لأنفسهم وإنما ينسبون الفضل إلى المولى وحده جل جلاله. وهذا يوسف لما مكنه الله نسب كل خير إلى ربه وكل شر إلى الشيطان، وسأل ربه بمنتهى التواضع وبمنتهى الإخلاص أن توفني مسلما. فقط أريد أن أموت مسلما يا رب وألحقني الصالحون ركب عظيم يوم القيامة يا رب ألحقني بهم. وهذا قول الكريم ابن الكريم عليهم الصلاة والسلام أجمعين. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين. أستغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام on the day of Fatih Mecca, how does he enter Mecca? Does he enter Mecca wearing a large turban, dressed like a king with his head held high as he is being praised and his name is being chanted? No. And had he done that, we would have had no problem with it because he can do whatever he wants, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But you want to learn from him. He enters and his head is stuck, his forehead, he sticks it on the mane of his horse. He enters Mecca with his head held down as he praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he performs tahleel. He refuses to enter Mecca with his head held high. He doesn't want to do that in humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's how great individuals and sincere souls practice success. They practice it that way. They know. They're honest with themselves. They know that every step of the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated it. Every step of the way. It wasn't me. Wasn't me. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? For me to take credit for anything in my life, what are you talking about? Based on what? A few hours I spent reading a book? Reading a book that I had the ability to read because Allah made sure I had parents who taught me to read? Because Allah gave me eyes that actually work and put me in a place where I was able to be educated? I am taking credit for what exactly here? What exactly did I do that's so impressive that I need to pat myself on the back and take credit for what happened? No. The credit is all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is how that's how we're all as Muslims. This is the consistency of your ethics. If your ethics are truly constant, then when you're on top, it'll be just as clear. Look at him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, just like Yusuf. Honestly, way more impressive. It's the same. He spoke and behaved the same way. He was the same easygoing, humble, kind, gentle human being when he was in Mecca, oppressed physically and financially, and when he was ruling Arabia. No difference. No difference. Sometimes you're wondering, how is that even possible? Well, that's how prophets were, and that's what we have to learn. You have to decide who you are now. Who are you? Who are you? What do you represent? What are your ethics? Be very clear. What are they? 1, 2, 3. That is who you are till the day you die, till the day you meet Allah. It doesn't matter what changes. I have a lot of people come and say, Wallahi, I used to do a lot of tatawwu and volunteering, and I used to give, and Wallahi, I stopped. This community, why? Were you doing it for this community? You were doing it for the community? That's why you stopped? You don't do it? If you're doing it for Allah, Allah is the same. He has never changed. If you're doing it for the community, obviously you'll stop doing it. People will stab you in the back 1,000,000 times as you go through philanthropy or any act of volunteering or help that you're going to offer people. But if you're not doing it for them, it won't change. It doesn't matter to you. And when you're on top, you continue to see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who offered it. Jalla Jalaluhu. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they would say, Yawm al-malhama. Sa'ad ibn Waqqas is carrying the banner and he's saying, today is the day of blood. Today we shed the blood of Quraysh that fought us for 20 years. The Prophet would take the banner from Sa'ad and give it to his son Qais, Sa'ad's kid, and tell him, no, yawm al-marhama. Today's the day of mercy. It's not the day of blood. We're not entering like that. We're not entering, we're not gloating, we're not going in showing off and putting people down and making them feel less and taking credit for us that is not due for us to take. That's how he lived, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ever read Surat al-Nasr? That's what Surat al-Nasr teaches. If you recite it a lot in Salah because it's short and you like it, good. Understand what it means. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. When finally the victory of Allah and the opening of Allah comes to you. It'll come at some point in your life. You'll achieve something, inshallah, great. It reminds you of what true victory is. What is true victory, Ya Rabb? وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. That is the true victory for Muslims. is when we are able to convey this message and people enter Islam afwaja in large groups. That is victory. Anything that doesn't achieve that is not true victory. Anything that does not perform, if we are not able to achieve that in our own community and people, we're not victorious. So don't fool yourself. I can't fool myself with the small milestones that I've met in my life that they're not victory. Victory is when people are entering Islam in abundance. That is victory. And when that victory actually occurs, what do you do? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Two things you do. You do two things. You praise Allah. Sabbih bihamdi means you increase your praising of Allah. You take the credit and the spotlight and you direct it elsewhere. It's not me. It's not me. If someone listens to something I say today and they find it helpful, it's not me. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who allowed me this opportunity, who granted me the proper upbringing to be able to say something helpful. And everything I say that is incorrect today is all on me, and I accept that and I'll carry it. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ. And then ask for forgiveness for the mistakes on the way. Look at your flaws. On your way to victory, look at your flaws. What did you do wrong? And ask Allah to forgive you. Full humbleness. This is what a Muslim does when we're victorious, when we're on top. Be very careful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at you when you're on rock bottom, but He also looks at you when you're on top of the hill. He's very interested in your behaviors in both places. That's the end of this reflection on this surah. Next week, inshallah, we'll start the reflections on the final surah within this series that's going on for like 8 months now, in Surat Al-Ra'd. I will be giving the 12 o'clock khutbah, inshallah, for the next few weeks until the new imam makes his way, inshallah, Imam Muhammad al-Jammali, to the masjid. And at that point, I will hand the baton over, inshallah, to him, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So we'll go through this series, inshallah, try to finish it before he makes it, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Final few messages, inshallah. The fatayr are sold in the gym, and there's a scholastic, I think that's what it's called. There's a book fair outside, so please participate in that as well. واعلموا أن الله أمرنا بأمر عظيم فقال إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وارض اللهم عن زوجاته أمهات المؤمنين وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعن صحابته الغر الميامين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين ونفس كروب المكروبين وارفع الغم عن المغمومين وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين اللهم انصر إخواننا المرابطين في المسجد الأقصى ورده إلينا في العاجل القريب يا رب العالمين وردنا أجمعين إليك وإلى دينك ردا جميلا وتب علينا من جميع ذنوبنا توبة نصوحا طهرنا بها قلبا وجسدا وروحا وما ذلك عليك اللهم بعزيز ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون أقم الصلاة
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
دائما أبدا لا إله إلا الله استووا اعتدلوا استقيموا لا تختلفوا حاذوا من المناكب سدوا الخلل لا تدعوا فرجا بينكم سووا الصف تثبيت الصف من إقام الصلاة أتموا الأول فالأول لينوا بأيدي إخوانكم shoulder to shoulder ankle to ankle closing the gaps